I was living in a 5 baths 10 storage unit, eating cold soup straight from the can, when I found the briefcase with my name on it. 6 months earlier, I had everything: a husband, 2 beautiful children, a cozy home filled with laughter, and a career I loved. Then my sister took it all. My husband, my job, even my kids. She called it fate. He called it an upgrade. I called it the day I stopped believing in family. That night, I got a text from my ex-husband. "You'll die poor and alone." For a moment, I almost believed him, until I pried open that briefcase and saw the stacks of cash and the letter from my dead uncle. This is just travel money. The real fortune waits at these coordinates. What I found at those coordinates didn't just change my life. It shattered everything I thought I knew about love, betrayal, and blood. My name is Clara Hayes, and 6 months ago, my life looked perfect from the outside. I was married to Ethan, a charming project manager with a smile that made people trust him too easily. We had 2 kids, Liam, 14, who lived for football, and Sophie, 10, who still slept with her stuffed bunny. We lived in a small 2-story house in Riverbend, Oregon, blue shutters, white porch swing, and a front yard that smelled like lilacs in spring. I worked as a senior designer at Riverbend Architecture, a firm I helped build from the ground up. Ironically, my younger sister Chloe worked there too. Everyone loved her. Confident, social, the one who never missed a chance to shine. I used to think we were a team, sisters against the world, until the email arrived. It was a Thursday afternoon when an anonymous message popped up in my inbox. Subject: "You deserve to know." Attached was a single photo: Ethan and Chloe, kissing behind our office building. My stomach dropped. At first, I thought, this must be fake. Then I noticed the background: the red dumpster, the cracked brick wall. The same one I walked past every day. By the time I got home, I was shaking. Ethan was in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone like nothing was wrong. "Ethan," I whispered, holding out my phone. "What is this?" He sighed, set his phone down, and said quietly, "Clara, don't make a scene." "A scene?" My voice cracked. "That's my sister." He rubbed his temples. "You were always so busy, so distant. Chloe understands me. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it did." Every memory, every laugh, every touch collapsed like broken glass. The next morning, Chloe walked into work with a new haircut and her hand in Ethan's. By Monday, my boss called me in. "We've decided to go in a different direction. Chloe will be taking over your role." A different direction? No, it was exile. Within weeks, Ethan filed for divorce. He painted me as unstable, neglectful, obsessed with work. He got the house, the kids, and my sister smiled beside him in court. The night the papers were finalized, I stood outside the courthouse in the rain, clutching an umbrella that wouldn't open. Then my phone buzzed. Another text from Ethan. "You'll die poor and alone. Chloe's already a better mother to our kids than you ever were." That was the moment something inside me broke. Quietly, completely. But I didn't know then that losing everything was only the beginning. Main character: Clara Hayes. After that night outside the courthouse, I stopped feeling like a person. I was a shadow haunting my own life, a ghost staring through the window of a home that used to be mine. Ethan and Chloe moved into my house. My house. And my children stayed with them. Liam's football pictures started showing up online again, but Ethan was in them now, smiling like he'd earned that life. Sophie looked smaller, sadder. When I called, Chloe answered, "They're fine, Clara. Maybe it's better if you give them space." Space. Space from their mother. Within weeks, my savings were gone, eaten up by lawyer fees and rent I couldn't afford. Then came the letter from HR. Your severance has been adjusted due to misconduct. Misconduct? They claimed I'd accessed private company files, something I'd never done. Chloe had made sure of that. I remember standing in the grocery store that day, holding a carton of milk, realizing my debit card would decline. My world spun. I put the milk back and walked out empty-handed. By the end of the month, I was sleeping, in my car behind a closed diner, using their restroom to wash my face. One morning, the diner owner caught me and said gently, "There's a place down by the highway. Storage units. Quiet. Cheap." That's how I ended up there. Unit 32B, 10 feet long, 5 feet wide. Just enough for a cot, a lantern, and 2 boxes of clothes. The air smelled like metal and old smoke. Each night, I listened to the rain tapping on the roof, whispering the same cruel truth. This is all you'll ever be, forgotten. Then came the night that changed everything. I'd sold my wedding ring for $40 and used half to buy gas. When I came back to the unit, my flashlight beam caught something behind a broken chair, a flash of brown leather, an old briefcase. Dust-covered, handle cracked. I dragged it out, and nearly dropped it when I saw the tag, Clara J. Hayes. I frowned. I'd never owned anything like it. The lock was old-fashioned, 3 digits. I tried my birthday, my wedding date. Nothing worked. Frustrated, I pushed it aside and wrapped myself in a blanket. But sleep wouldn't come. The silence felt heavier than ever. At 2 odd a.m., I sat up, grabbed a screwdriver, and whispered, "You took everything, Ethan. But maybe not this." The lock snapped open with a metallic click. Inside were stacks of $100 bills, neatly wrapped, and a folded, yellowed note. My hands trembled so hard the paper nearly tore. The handwriting was crooked, slanted, and oddly familiar. Loops that leaned too far right. It read, "Clara, if you're reading this, you've lost everything. Good. Only when the lies are stripped away can you see the truth. The money in this case is travel money. The real fortune, and the truth about your father's death, wait at these coordinates. 470916 degree N, 113,19948 W, Timberwolf Trail, Montana." At the bottom was a name I hadn't seen in over a decade, Uncle Raymond. I froze. Uncle Raymond, my father's older brother, the man everyone said went crazy after the war. He used to warn my dad, "Watch your back, boy. The wolves wear suits." After my father's accident at the sawmill, Raymond vanished into the Montana mountains. No one ever found him. I used to think he'd lost his mind. Now, sitting in that cold metal box with stacks of cash at my feet, I wasn't so sure. At dawn, I counted the money, $49,000, crisp and clean, sealed with bank bands, not drug money. Not random. Planned. And then I whispered to the empty room, "All right, Uncle Raymond, I'll play your game." That morning, I sold the last of my jewelry, packed a duffel bag with clothes, a flashlight, and an old road map. I bought a beat-up Ford Escape from a man who didn't ask questions. As I filled the tank, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Hollow eyes, pale skin, but behind it, something new. Hope. I turned toward the highway. "Goodbye, rock bottom," I whispered. "Let's go find the truth." And I drove toward Timberwolf Trail, Montana. Toward the secret that would change everything. The road to Montana stretched like a scar through the wilderness, endless gray ribbons slicing through forests and fog. I drove for 3 days, sleeping in rest stops, eating crackers, and replaying Uncle Raymond's note in my head like a broken record. Only when the lies are stripped away can you see the truth. By the time I reached Timberwolf Trail, my hands were shaking from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. The GPS cut out miles ago, leaving only the sound of gravel crunching under tires and the whisper of wind through the pines. At the end of a narrow dirt path, I saw it. A cabin, half swallowed by the forest. The wood was blackened with age, moss climbing up the porch rails. It looked abandoned, but the padlock on the door was new. I hesitated. Then, heart-pounding, I took the key I'd found taped under the briefcase lid. It fit perfectly. The door creaked open. Inside, dust, silence, and the faint smell of tobacco and cedar. Stacks of old boxes lined the walls, each labeled in my uncle's handwriting. Mill records, 1993-1997. Correspondence, Hayes Timber Co. Do not trust LK, LK. My breath caught. Lisa Chloe, my sister. I opened the nearest box. Inside were dozens of old contracts, letters, and, at the bottom, a manila folder stamped confidential. Inside the folder was a photograph of my father shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, gray suit, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Scrawled across the back, "He didn't fall, Clara. He was pushed." My knees buckled. I dropped into the nearest chair, staring at those words. For years I believed my father's death at the sawmill was an accident. Faulty scaffolding, a tragedy. But Uncle Raymond had always insisted someone wanted him dead. The next page was a bank statement. Offshore accounts. Millions of dollars moved just weeks before the accident. Every transaction led back to one name. Langford and Knox Holdings, .lk Lisa Chloe, my sister's initials. But Langford and Knox, that was the corporation that bought out Hayes Timber after my father's death. They'd made millions turning our family business into real estate holdings. And Chloe? She'd just been hired there, a junior analyst right after college. Suddenly the puzzle fit. She hadn't married well. She'd been placed. A pawn in someone else's game. And I was the casualty. I kept digging, pulling out letter after letter written in Uncle Raymond's rough scrawl. Your father wanted out. They threatened him. L&K offered your sister a deal after his death. My chest felt like it might cave in. Lisa hadn't just stolen my husband. She'd stolen my inheritance, my legacy, my family's name. Then I found it, a small metal box hidden under loose floorboards. Inside, a flash drive and a handwritten note. Clara, if you made it this far, you know. I couldn't stop them, but I took everything they buried, documents, patents, accounts, and locked them away. This drive holds proof of every deal, every bribe, every betrayal. You own it all now. Use it wisely. Raymond. My hands trembled. I turned the flash drive over. Etched on the side were the words, Hayes Legacy Falesi didn't have Wi-Fi, but the urge to plug it in was overwhelming. Still, something in me whispered, wait. I packed everything, the folder, the box, the letters, into my duffel and stepped outside. The night air was cold and electric, the forest alive with sound. Then I heard it, the low growl of an engine. Headlights flickered between the trees. I ducked behind the porch railing, clutching the duffel tight. A black SUV rolled to a stop by the cabin. 2 men stepped out. Dark coats, sunglasses even in the night. One of them spoke into a radio. She's been here. The lock's broken. The other man kicked the door open, his flashlight sweeping across the cabin interior. Then faintly I heard him say, Call Ms. Knox, tell her we found it. Chloe. My sister had sent them. I didn't wait. I ran into the woods, branches tearing at my sleeves, heart slamming against my ribs. The sound of boots and shouting echoed behind me. But for the first time in years, I wasn't running away. I was running toward something, the truth, my father's name, and the $80 million secret that would destroy everything my sister had built. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned. The forest swallowed me whole, dark, endless, and humming with crickets and danger. When I finally collapsed beside a stream, the moonlight hit my trembling hands. I was still clutching the flash drive. Uncle Raymond's last message. The men's voices had faded hours ago, but my heart refused to slow. I waited until dawn painted the horizon gold before finding the courage to move again. A small diner appeared on the edge of a highway, Millie's place. I walked in, muddy and exhausted, clutching my duffel like it was my heartbeat. The waitress, kind eyes, gray hair pulled into a bun, didn't ask questions. She just poured coffee and said, You look like you're running from a storm, honey. I smiled weakly. Maybe I am. When she went to refill another cup, I slid my laptop out and plugged in the drive. The screen blinked. Hayes legacy files. Access granted. Inside were hundreds of documents. Emails, contracts, transaction logs, decades of corruption linking Langford and Knox Holdings to bribery, land theft, and illegal deforestation. But one file froze my breath. Project Timberwolf, classified, ownership transfer agreement. I opened it. There it was, my father's digital signature. But beside it was another, Lisa Knox, my sister. And the date on the document? 2 days before my father's death. He'd been forced to sign away the company. And Chloe, Lisa Knox, had helped them do it. The accident was no accident. My hands were shaking as I scrolled further. Emails between Chloe and a man named Ethan R. Knox, my ex-husband. The transfer is complete. Clara won't know what hit her. Make sure she's discredited before the court date. Raymond's files can't surface. Every sentence was a knife twisting deeper. They hadn't just betrayed me out of love. It was a business move. A marriage for money, a sister's betrayal for power. But one folder stood out. Vault 19, Hayes Holdings. It contained bank access credentials and property titles across 3 states. At the bottom, current market valuation, $79,482,000 USD. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice, and my uncle had left me the keys. I spent the next few days at a roadside motel, combing through every file. Each document was proof, enough to dismantle Langford and Knox and expose Chloe's lies. But I needed help, someone who could make the evidence matter. That's when I found Detective Marcus Hale's number in one of Uncle Raymond's old contacts. He'd investigated my father's death years ago, but was pulled off the case. When I called, his voice was wary. "Who is this?" "Clara Hayes, Raymond's niece." There was a long pause. "You have his files, don't you?" "Yes." "Then listen to me carefully. If Chloe and Ethan know you're alive, you're already being tracked. Meet me in Helena tomorrow. Don't use your real name. And whatever you do, don't go home." That night, I barely slept. I thought about my kids, Liam and Sophie, sleeping in the house that used to be mine, under the roof their mother built and their aunt stole. I promised myself I wouldn't let them grow up believing lies. At sunrise, I packed the files, the drive, and the photo of my father into a backpack. When I stepped out of the motel, a black car was parked across the street. A man in a suit sat inside, pretending to read a newspaper. I turned away quickly, heart hammering. Uncle Raymond had been right. The wolves never stopped hunting. But this time, I wasn't running. This time I had their map. Their secrets. Their downfall in my hands. I started the engine, whispering to myself, "They took my life. Now I'll take their empire." The road to Helena stretched out ahead, empty, waiting. The truth had cost me everything, but soon it would cost them more. The drive to Helena was endless. Rain streaked down the windshield like the past refusing to let go. Each mile closer to Montana felt like walking toward the truth, and the truth was sharp enough to draw blood. I met Detective Marcus Hale in a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. He looked older than I remembered from the news articles, gray at the temples, eyes like someone who'd seen too much and believed too little. He slid a folder across the table. "Your uncle was right. Your father didn't die in an accident." My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were crime scene photos, a forged autopsy report, and a confession draft from a mill supervisor who had disappeared a week later. Marcus's voice dropped. "Your father found out Langford and Knox were laundering money through the mill. He tried to expose them. They silenced him. Your uncle tried to reopen the case, but they went after him too. That's why he went off-grid." I felt my throat tighten. All the lies, all the missing pieces, and finally fitting together like a cruel puzzle. "And my sister?" I whispered. "She married into the Knox family right after the takeover. She was their inside link. Ethan was her ticket into the company." My stomach turned. Everything, my marriage, my job, my family, had been part of their plan. Marcus leaned in. "But Raymond didn't just leave you those files, Clara. He left you the ownership codes to the original Hayes timberlands. Legally, you're still the primary heir. They can't touch that without your consent. That's when the plan started forming. Quiet, clean, unstoppable. For years, they'd used my name to build their empire. Now, I'd use it to destroy them. 2 weeks later, I walked into the Langford and Knox corporate gala in Helena, uninvited, unnoticed. The marble lobby sparkled with chandeliers and champagne glasses. Chloe, or Mrs. Lisa Knox now, stood at the podium, wearing diamonds that caught the light like ice. Ethan stood beside her, hand on her waist, smile rehearsed. The room buzzed with investors and reporters. Right on cue, Marcus, disguised as a maintenance worker, plugged a drive into the projector system. Within seconds, every screen in the hall flickered. Chloe's voice echoed through the speakers. Make sure Clara's termination looks legitimate. Delete any trace of her father's files. Then Ethan's response. Don't worry. By the time she figures it out, we'll own everything. Gasps filled the room. Reporters lifted their phones. Chloe's face went pale. Ethan froze. I stepped forward through the crowd. Did you really think you could bury the truth forever? Chloe's voice cracked. Clara, what did you do? What I should have done years ago. Stop letting you define me. Security guards rushed forward, but Marcus flashed his badge. Federal warrant. Everyone stays where they are. The fallout was fast and brutal. Langford and Knox's stock plummeted overnight. Federal charges followed. Fraud, conspiracy, manslaughter. Chloe and Ethan were both arrested within the week. The children, Liam and Sophie, were placed temporarily with me while the case went through court. When they arrived, Sophie ran into my arms and whispered, Mom, are we safe now? I held her tight, tears burning my eyes. Yes, sweetheart. We're finally safe. Months later, I returned to Timberwolf Trail, standing at the edge of the forest where Uncle Raymond had hidden the truth. The land was mine again. Every tree, every breath of mountain air. A new company was being built there now. Hayes Restoration, dedicated to replanting the forest the old empire destroyed. As I looked out over the horizon, the wind carried a whisper through the trees. You found it, Clara. Maybe it was just the breeze. Or maybe Uncle Raymond had been waiting all along for someone to finish his fight. I smiled softly. Rest now, Uncle. The wolves are gone. The sun broke through the clouds then, warm, golden, and full of promise. For the first time in years, the future didn't scare me, because I wasn't the woman who'd lost everything anymore. I was the woman who took it all back.